Hi, we're going to make some bone broth, and Austin is here to join me. Austin is a friend of my son's, and his family is following a ketogenic way of eating. In fact, his mom, Jen, and her husband Todd, and his older brother Michael were here with me sharing their story and trying the carrot cake cheesecake. So Austin's over playing, and I was going to make bone broth, and he said, I'll help you. And my son wouldn't help, so Austin's going to be my great helper today. Bone broth is one of those super simple things, and I think folks make it too difficult. But I'm going to show you how I do my bone broth. Now, I've got some chicken and I've got some beef, and we're going to do the chicken first. And what I like to do with the chicken is, I told you over and over, I'm a lazy cook. And so, Austin, what we have are some chicken quarters, and I found these on sale for 69 cents a pound, which is a great price. I actually bought 4 packs of the chicken thighs, or excuse me, the chicken quarters. And what we like about that is, have you ever eaten chicken leg or chicken thigh?
Yes.
Well, we can pull the skin off and eat it. So there's actually meat in there. I'm not just making broth, but I'm cooking chicken that I can make other yummy things with, like chicken noodle soup without real noodles, with the miracle noodles. Or what kind of chicken do you like, Austin?
I just like all chicken.
Any chicken? Yeah, chicken's good. So Austin's going to use the tongs, and the tongs, right? Yeah, to put the chicken in. So I'm using 1 pack. Go ahead and do it. I'm using 1 pack of the chicken quarters. I'm going to see how far this gets, because I also bought a really large pack of chicken backs. And I'm going to show you while Austin's putting that in. In the chicken backs, there were some chicken necks that look like this. And there were also chicken backs like this. Now there's quite a bit of meat, a lot of meat on there. So I'm going to put it in the crock pot. And Austin's a great help. I'm going to put that all in the crock pot, and we'll put some apple cider vinegar, and we'll cover it with water. Tomorrow, this is in the evening, so tomorrow morning I will fish out all the pieces, get the chicken, thanks Austin, put it all back in and let the bones go for 36 to 48 hours. The longer the better. And I put it on low. Some folks try to put it on high, but my understanding is it can damage the proteins. So I do cook it on low. But let me put a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Now, the other thing that I've got enough chicken. This is about half full. I'm actually going to put 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. The apple cider vinegar, you cannot taste it. It's supposed to help leach the minerals from the bone broth. The important thing about bone broth is there's all kinds of nutrients, minerals, things that come from it. And then you can also buy it in the store, but in the store, there's often questionable ingredients. So if you can make your own, and again, like this, when you can make your own, you know what's in it. And you can use the chicken for a meal, plus you get the broth. So Austin's gonna pour the water in for me, and we want it just covered. Now, while some people, when they do this, yeah, I'm gonna straighten it out. Austin, you're doing a great job. And you're not going to use the whole thing, just a little more. Yep, you're doing fine. There you go. Just about covered. There you go, that's good. Thank you, Austin. Some people add other seasonings to this. I could throw those other thighs in, but I think I'm going to save those for another meal. Some people roast them before they put them in. I've tried that, and honestly, I don't think it makes a difference. So I'm going to set this on low. My crock pot will go, I think, 18 hours on low, and then before I go to bed, I'll reset it to make sure it gets, again, tomorrow I'll pull out the bits that have some meat, salvage that, throw it back in, check the water levels, and let it go. Some people put garlic, onion, other seasonings. I like mine kind of plain, to be honest. That way I can use it in whatever recipe I want. It doesn't have those other flavors. And I'm always suspicious that adding carrots, onions, things like that will add carbs to it. So I try to keep it really simple. That's it. That's all you do. Throw them in the pot, throw vinegar, throw water, we're done. Okay, Austin, have you ever seen anything that looks like this? Let's see, that one's for the chicken. Let's put that one aside. We'll use different ones for this. But what I have here are beef neck bones. And Winston is very interested in our beef neck bones. You got to make sure we keep him out of it. But these neck bones, this is a package. Actually, it was $2.59 a pound. And That's not a great price for something you're just going to use to throw in, but it does have some meat. So I'm hoping that we can salvage some meat off of this to make a yummy soup with those pieces of neck bones. I also have oxtail. Now the oxtail was $4.99 a pound, and that actually seemed kind of pricey to me, but I bought it anyway. You can buy just a bag of frozen bones. This is conventional beef. It's not grass-fed, but it's just, and you can roast it ahead of time. Now when I've roasted it, I simply put it in a glass baking dish. Let it put coconut oil. Use the when it came out, roasted it for maybe 45 minutes to an hour on a high heat. Thanks, Austin. Put it in a crock pot, swished water around the glass baking dish to get all the goodies, and put it back in the crock pot. I'm using my Instant Pot for this. Now, if the higher heat does break down the proteins, we're in trouble. But I wanted to try this. Honestly, I only have one crock pot, so that's why we're using this. So Austin, if you want to dump those in, you can use the tongs, either one. You can use the tongs or dump them in.
Dump them in so I can use that one.
Okay, there you go. So he's dumping in that. Let me grab the paper out. Here we go. And there are the oxtails. And again, I think I can salvage a little meat from this. $4.99 a pound, I hope so. And then we're gonna put that in. And let me grab that. There you go. And just like before, I'm gonna put a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. And Austin can grab the water. And when I take this out, thank you, Austin. When I take this out, again, I'll lift the bigger pieces and I'll show you what I do, but I filter the broth. And then when it's filtered, that's the second tablespoon. Once it's filtered, it's just a clear, thank you, clear, wonderful thing. Now, I'm not gonna put quite as much water. There you go. You wanna do it? I'm not gonna put quite as much water in this one as before because of the steaming of the Instant Pot. Now I can use this, and I'm debating, I can use it as Instant Pot and have broth in probably an hour. That's perfect, go ahead. Perfect. I can have it, or I can put it on low and use my Instant Pot like a crock pot. My inclination is to do that because I just think that things are better when they're, can you push those down, Austin? I think things are better when they're kind of allowed to do low and slow, and you've heard me talk about that before. I also want to say, let me go back to the chicken real quick. Normally I use chicken feet, and I couldn't find any when I was out shopping. Grab this guy, there we go. I couldn't find any. Perfect. When we were out shopping, so I don't have chicken feet in it. Chicken feet makes chicken broth really thick and gelatinous. And how do you know you've done a good job with chicken broth? When you skim all the stuff out, set it aside in the fridge, and within an hour or so, it's very firm. You can actually cut it with a knife because it gels up. So let's take this, we'll put it on. I'm going to use it as a crock pot, I think, low and slow. We'll do this. I'll pull out this meat, and then I'll show you at the end what I do when I get all the larger bits out, and how we strain the broth. So our bones have been brewing now for about 40 hours. Usually I do 36 to 48 hours, and this has been about 40 hours. So I've taken the lid off the crock pot. I turned it off to let it cool a little bit. It's still pretty warm. But what I do to begin with is I simply take a slotted spoon and I scoop out all the good stuff that's been roasting. I scoop out the bigger pieces of it. There's going to be little bits, and we'll deal with that in a minute. But once I scoop it up, I go through and I pull out the meat. And so anything that's meat, I separate here so that I can use as I cook. And then the fat and the bone, well, the fat and the skin go to the dogs. And the bone gets thrown away because I don't give poultry bones. Now, how do you know if it's ready? Now, that is all about the bones. And let me show you real quick. Pull the chicken off. When you get to the bones, it's going to just be falling apart. But this is neck. This bone should be so soft that when you squeeze it, it just becomes powdery. And you can see I can squeeze that bone, and it's just a powdery paste kind of material. It probably would be okay to give to the dogs, but I don't want to risk it, so I don't. But the bones should be really, really soft. If your bones aren't soft enough, your beef bones or chicken bones aren't soft enough, just to press and squish then they're not ready. So this is a chicken stuff. And as I said earlier when I was making this, normally I use chicken feet because the chicken feet give it such great gelatin. I couldn't find chicken feet when I was making this. So I've used a combination of necks and backs. So I won't be pulling a lot of meat. I did have the 2 chicken quarters. I won't be pulling a lot of meat off this. I'm getting the very biggest bits out. Smells so good. If you tasted this right now, you'd be surprised. There's not a lot of sodium in this. So I always add salt when I use it, pink Himalayan sea salt, especially if I'm just drinking a cup of broth. So you probably can't see it, but I'm getting the biggest pieces out. I'll set those aside to cool. I'll pull the meat off. But then the other thing I'll do is I'll strain the rest of it. Another couple big bits in the chicken necks. And I'll pour it through. People strain it in different ways. One of the things I like to do is to use a wire strainer. Now, some people use a cheesecloth. I had a wire strainer on hand when I started doing this, and so that's what I tend to use. The dogs are excited about the broth. Okay, so I just hold it over as closely as I can and ladle it out. And you'll be able to see that this catches a lot of the smaller bits. This has always worked super, super well, just in getting all the pieces out. I will set this aside to cool, and then I can portion it out. Now, some people like to take the, and you can see these are just little bits that are getting sorted through. People like to take the bone broth and let it cool, put it in containers. Some people put it in ice cube trays, and so then you can pull out an ice cube bone broth and melt that, heat that up just in a cup to drink. I've not tried that. What I tend to do, I'm going to set that aside, but you can see how gorgeous that is. What I tend to do is use these containers that I bought on Amazon. They're supposed to be BPA free, and a whole pack was not expensive at all. And I'm trying to see how big this is. I can't remember now. And I can't read the packaging, but I want to say that this is like 3 cups of bone broth, and I'll look that up and let you know what that is. But basically, you just strain it like that, and then you have bone broth. Now, when I let this cool, I will give it a really good stir. You can see the fat on top. See all that gorgeous chicken fat? And I might put it through the strainer again because it's not entirely clear. There's some sediment there. But once this cools, the fat will, especially in the fridge, the fat will kind of put a layer on top, and then the other will gel. And that's how you know too if you have successful bone broth. It's going to gel. In fact, when you take it out of the fridge, you'll be able to cut it almost with a knife because it'll have so much gelatin in it. Some people skim the fat off before they freeze it. So if this will cool, I'll pull it into this container, let it cool before I throw it in the freezer. Some people will skim the fat when it cools. I don't do that because I like to use that fat whether I'm drinking it or whether I'm using it in a recipe. I like to keep the fat in there. Do what you feel comfortable with. The other thing that I do is I'll pull this out of the fridge, and sometimes I just keep it in the back of the fridge. I use it for a recipe, so not only soup, but if I'm making sauteing veggies and I need a little broth, I'll use this instead. If I'm going to drink a cup of broth, it's really good, if I've got all the fat in it, it's really good to mix it in a blender or Ninja because again, it kind of emulsifies the fat and makes it really rich. But you're gonna want to add sea salt because this is not gonna taste like the store-bought broths that you're used to. Let's take a peek at the beef bones. Now, I did the beef bones in my Instant Pot, and I did not do them on a pressure cook. I used the crock pot setting on my the crock pot setting on the Instant Pot. And basically, the same thing with these beef bones as with the chicken. They are so soft, which I'm not gonna be able to snap it, but they are so soft that generally I can just snap them. In fact, I might let these go just a little bit longer. I did snap a piece when I checked it earlier. There's some that's coming off, but usually I use marrow bones Couldn't find marrow bones, so I used beef neck and oxtails for this. But they should be soft enough that they just snap. That one did a little bit and are powdery. So this really could go another few hours, but I wanted to go ahead and get the video done and show you. And yes, there, see how powdery that is? That just came apart in my hands. That's what you're looking for. And that's the part that your dogs will love you for. Okay, so let's get the rest of this out. What I do is, again, just take my tongs and get the bigger pieces and scoop those out. And there's a mechanism in my Instant Pot, whoops, that I can just lift out. So I'm going to try that. And what I'll also do is use this again. Can you wash that? I'll use that again to strain the broth. But this just lifts out. And that gets a lot of the bigger pieces. And Banjo, our Morkie, is coming around at my feet. Banjo, you want some beef? Here's a little bit of powdery bone. They love me. The dogs think I'm a genius, even if nobody else does. Okay, so what I'll do with that is I'll put it over, I guess I'll get the bigger bits out, and then I'll strain it just like I did with the chicken broth. Super, super easy to do. Okay, and I'll also pick out the meat. There's a little bit of meat there. I'll also pick out the meat to use for a meal. Now, something that I often do, I'm doing this just to show you, but often what I'll do is I have a strainer that looks like this, and I'll put, it's really for vegetables, but it works fine for this. I'll put this over the sink, put a bowl underneath it, and then my husband, because this is kind of heavy, will pour it over, and then I can do it a whole lot faster than what I'm doing now. Again, for beef broth, I really like to use something with marrow. I didn't have anything with marrow this time, so I used the neck bones and the oxtails. And I'm just straining it just like I did with the chicken. Now, remember, the bone broth is super, super important to give you minerals and nutrients that you may lose. You're going to process a lot of sodium when you start a low-carb, high-fat diet. And so the broth is wonderful to help with the keto flu. It's also great to cook with. And this is just gorgeous. I think of this as liquid gold. And there's a little bit of bits up on the side I'm trying to get. And that's all there is to it. That's how I make my bone broth. Again, I don't use vegetables. I don't use celery or onion that some people do. I quite honestly like keeping the flavor very, very plain. And look at that. It's gorgeous. We're up to a quart of bone broth, and I still have quite a bit left. This is probably going to give me close to 2 quarts from this. And this one, I haven't quite got a quart, but this will probably give me 2 quarts as well. So I will finish straining this. I'll pick the beef off the bones. I'm sure I'll give bones and fat to the dogs, and they'll be quite happy. If you make bone broth, don't overthink it. It's super, super simple, but you will appreciate having it as an option, especially if you're going through some keto flu. If you make this, I hope that you enjoy it too.